I thank you for taking a look at this video. It is a new site that I'm making for YouTube. It's called Scott's SharePoint site. I've been working on about 30 different video topics. The initial videos are in process now, and if you go to the link included in the description, you can see the new site. And it's going to be, as you see on the screen, about SharePoint, the current modern SharePoint Online experience, which is part of Microsoft 365. If we look at the About page, as I said here, it will be about the current version of SharePoint Online. That's part of the Microsoft universe. As things change in the future, the SharePoint future, I will add some updated videos as I have time. I've also laid out a 6-part series that is being made now that will contain many videos about many different topics related to the current version of SharePoint Online, and I hope the videos do help you in some way to learning something new about the current version of SharePoint. SharePoint has been a tool that has been around for a long time, and I think it's a really awesome tool and very useful. It's not free, but it can be inexpensive. It depends on what your needs are. So there is one video right here on the website, and basically it includes a SharePoint flowchart that explains everything. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at it here. So I expanded the size of the video so you can see how there is a part 1, and if we just scroll ahead a little bit here, we can see part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and part 6. So those are all the different topics and different videos I will be making about SharePoint. There are so many things to cover. It's a really great technology, and it is related to DevOps. In some ways, there's a lot of parallels to like the Azure DevOps experience, except it's for content and not code. But as I show here in part 6, I will end up talking about more advanced topics, using the REST API, using the Postman testing tools, looking at the SharePoint development framework, like with React, setting up an environment, using VS Code, packaging and deploying solutions, and some troubleshooting and debugging. So there you go. If you're interested at all, I would encourage you to go over to that channel and check it out. And I appreciate your time in watching this video. So I'd like to welcome you to my new YouTube channel. It's called Scott's SharePoint site, and it's going to be talking about Microsoft SharePoint. And so I made a flowchart here to show what the videos will be talking about. I structured them generally to be in 6 different groups. And so I'll scroll down my flowchart here so you can see what the different parts will be, and then I'll talk about them briefly. So there's part 2. Here's part 3. And each one of these boxes inside of part 1 through 6 will make one video at least. Part 4. A lot of good things to talk about there. Part 5. And finally part 6 I called Advanced Topics. That's going to be getting into the API, such as the SharePoint REST API, the Postman testing tool suite, which is a free set of tools, the SharePoint development framework, talking about setting up your environment using VS Code, packaging and deploying solutions, troubleshooting and debugging. But let's go back to the beginning. And so part 1 will be, I guess you could call it a general overview. what is SharePoint, look at the history of it just a little bit. I certainly won't be covering everything because SharePoint has been around for a very long time and it would take forever to talk about everything, but I'm trying to pick the most common things that I've worked with in the past and talk about them in the context of the new SharePoint, because SharePoint is always changing over the years. So I think it's good to make a new video that talks about SharePoint Online and all of these tools that surround it. So that's basically part one. We'll log in, we'll take a look at creating users, take a look at how to get it, how much it might cost, the admin tools to manage it, then get into things like taxonomy and term sets and term groups, things at like a high level, setting up enterprise keywords, setting up some custom keywords, and also again just talking about what SharePoint is and the types of things that it's good at doing. Part two, we'll get into a little bit more details about creating communication sites and team sites, and I'll be using a new SharePoint site that I set up for the purpose of this video series. And I will also create hubs and hub sites and show how to link those together. We'll upload a bunch of sample documents, and within 24 hours we'll go ahead and do some searches to show how that works. We'll look at creating web parts and WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get, being able to drag and drop and configure your various pages and components in your SharePoint site, and then using some of the built-in SharePoint tools to modify the layout of various content in a SharePoint site, and then looking at the configuration settings for sites and looking at the revision history. SharePoint keeps track of that for you, which is really nice in case you need to go backwards to a different version if something gets messed up, or the content approval process that is built into SharePoint, which has been around for a long time and is I think a really great feature. And then in part three, we'll take a look into a little bit more details about SharePoint lists and libraries, about SharePoint columns, metadata columns, choice columns, lookup columns. We'll turn on enterprise keywords and see how that works with things we talked about in the first part of the video. Global user keywords, I'll go ahead and create some of those, or you may have heard them called custom keywords. And again, looking at some of the configuration settings for these different pieces of SharePoint. The next part, part four, we'll look at customizing views in SharePoint. There's a lot of great functionality there. Filtering, sorting, and grouping data. And then using some other tools to lay out various content in the SharePoint site, changing the look of the site using site templates. Looking at lists, compact list, and tile view. Those are three options that you have when you're looking at how you want to lay out your information in SharePoint. Editing and formatting views, adding comments or likes or ratings to your content, and then looking at a very powerful feature called JSON and customizing your user interface with JSON. Those types of things were not possible, not easily, or not at all in previous versions of SharePoint. So we'll be taking a look at and doing some of those in some of the videos. Part 5 gets into integration with other Microsoft technology. What is Microsoft 365? What is it? How will we use it in this set of videos? Power Automate, automate workflows and processes. And that will be talking back to SharePoint, adding information or reading information from SharePoint. Also, we'll be looking at customizing the edit form, which is a really great way to make the user experience better. We'll be looking at using Power Apps for some of that, and also integrating with Microsoft Teams in some of these workflows, the approval app, and something called adaptive cards. And I already did mention the different topics in part 6, which will be getting into programming and different ways to interface with the SharePoint system. So that is it in a nutshell. That will be how the new channel will be structured. And of course, after all these videos are completed, there'll be other ones in the future. And I will be uploading videos as I finish them. Don't really have a timetable for it, just as time allows. Some will go faster because they're easier. Some will take some more time because they are more involved. So I hope you enjoy the new channel, and I hope the content helps you in some way to learn some new things about the current version of SharePoint. I thank you for watching and subscribing, and I'll talk to you soon. If you like this channel, please like and subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when I post new content.